Okay, so I have started the recording. Okay, so in today's recording, I will be showing the assignment 3, that is the Docker configuration application deployment. So in this assignment for cloud computing course, so I will be creating Docker container and I will be creating a dummy Python web application and to access the web application from a container, and also a database that to be installed in another container. That is the demonstration for today's video. So this is the assignment. So first step will be to create 3 containers, that is my roll number, using my roll number like container 1, container 2 and container 3. And container 1 I will be installing in a web server. In my case I will be using Nginx. And container 2 I will be we need to install a database, so I will be installing MySQL. And after that, I'll be creating a dummy web application. In my case, I have used Python Flask framework to create a web application which can insert a data record in the database, that is in MySQL database, and that should be visible. So I'll demonstrate that web application is accessible from another container, container 3, and also the host system web browser. So that's why I am doing the screen recording for that purpose. Oh, just wanted to make sure that recording is on and screen sharing is on. Yeah, that's fine. So this was about the assignment. Now let's start. So for my simplicity, I have listed down the commands which I have used here. So if you, I have opened the Windows PowerShell as an administrator user. So if you see what are the currently the Docker containers that are running, you can see here like container my roll number 1, container my roll number 2 and 3. These 3 containers are up and running currently, and these are the Docker images I have. So in my laptop I have already set up the Docker desktop. I have gone through the documentation for Docker installation and setup on Windows 11 local system. So using that I have set up the Docker desktop in my system. So yeah, this is the Docker desktop. Here you can see what are the containers that are up and running right now. You can see there are 3 containers currently up and running. Container 1 that is used for installing a web server, that is Nginx. Container 2 that is used for installing a database. In my case, I have used MySQL. And container 3, I have installed the Flask web app. And in the demonstration, I will be showing from container 3 how to access the web application and how to insert a record in the database as well. That I'll be showing. Okay. Mm, so this was about the assignments. Okay, now I'll show you the Python code. This is the Python code. Using Flask framework, I have created the Python code. It is importing Flask and MySQL connector to connect the database, and this is the connection happening. And for to connect to MySQL database that is installed in container 2, I have used the IP address for the container 2, 172.18.0.2. That is the IP address for MySQL container. In my case, it is container 2, and the default port to connect to MySQL DB is 3306. Yeah, this is how the connection is happening. This is I am creating a table. These are the route I am creating for inserting the record and displaying the record. A simple Python code I have written. And this is how the main block works, like running the Python Flask web application. This is the port I have selected, 5000 port. So this is the Flask application for a dummy Flask application, I would say, for our demonstration purpose. And this is the Docker file. Like here, we need to give the instruction what to do, how to do. Like it is selecting the Python version and what is the working directory. In my case, it is like Flask web app. Next is like requirement.txt. It is trying to copy and install. That is requirement.txt is what are the different external libraries we need to run the Python web application. Like in my case, we are using Flask, so Flask is required to install, and we are using MySQL to so we need to connect to MySQL database. So MySQL connect Python is library is also required. So these two are the external dependency libraries are there. So we need to explicitly install those two libraries. So I have put these two into the requirement.txt file. So finally, in the Docker file, I have installing the requirement.txt. Next is copying into that Flask web app directory, and finally we are exposing the web app to 5000 port. So that's why we are passing exposing expose 5000. And finally, what are the library language and the web application file name? So it is using Python, and the web application file name is app.py. It is app.py. So that's why it is app.py. So this is how the Docker file is created. The requirement.txt file is created, and this is the Python Flask web application for our demonstration purpose. This is how it is created, and you can see the Docker containers are up and running for MySQL, Nginx, and Flask web app. You can see if I click here, you can see Nginx is up and running. It is successfully installed. This is the port localhost 8089. Okay. Now if I show you how the commands I have used. Yeah, for setting up the Nginx, I have used this command docker run d container my roll number _1 network 8080 port for Nginx. And this is the command I have used to create the network. I have to create a Docker network called my network. And container 2 is for MySQL database. This is the command I have used for setting up the MySQL database in the container 2. I have to select the username, password, DB name, all those stuff. And this is the command for creating the Docker image, docker build -t flask web app dot. So we'll be creating a Docker images. And after that, I have created a container 3. This is the command to create a container 3 for the Flask web app that is exposed to 5000 port. So we'll show you how the Flask web app is accessible from container 3. Just wanted to check how it's happening here. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. So this is for container 3 Docker run. Now, in the demonstration, I'll show how the insert a record in the database and all the stuff. This is the curl command. Let's go to Docker desktop. Now, if I go to the Flask web app, this open the terminal, I paste it, insert. You can see data inserted into the database. So data has been successfully inserted from container 3. Now, if I want to see the inserted data, we need to run this command. Yeah, so this is the like earlier records which I have inserted. So all the earlier records are also visible right now. Only thing is record 14 I have inserted. So basically it is inserting an email ID, name, and ID. So right now this is the case for 14. John is the name, ID is 14, and email is john@example.com. This is the email. So you can see from the container 3, we can access the other two containers, that is container 1 for Nginx web server and container 2, which is MySQL database container. So this is how it is working. If we go to inspect, you can see all the details here. This is the IP address and all those stuff, and this is the details. So it is clearly visible, like container 3 you can access other two containers. This was about all network configuration, all containers and web application. Yeah, so this was about the like accessing the web application from container 3. And if we see the network configuration, other two containers like inspect, we can check all the details how it was. This is the port 3306. This is default port for container 2 for MySQL database. MySQL is installed here. This is the IP address for that. Container 2 for MySQL. Container 1, if we go for Nginx server, yeah, you can see Nginx is installed here. It is up and running right now. It is my network and the host port is 8089. This is the port. We scroll down. Nginx is installed here. This is the IP address here. Okay, and container 3, if we go to that for Flask web application hosting, it is written Python Flask. It is app.py. That is the main file for the web application. It is made from Linux. Host port is 5000 port. This for Flask web app. That is the image. 1000. This is the IP address. Okay, so this was about the demonstration, and this was about the results, and this was the PowerShell prompt. You can see Docker images. What are the results? Docker ps-a. What are the results? Yeah, it is these three containers are up and running. Okay, so this was about the assignment 3 for creating three containers and accessing a web application Flask web application from the container 3 and accessing the other two containers, one for Nginx web server and another for MySQL database for Dockerization. Okay, and these were the commands. So now these are the if you want to see the results in the browser, you can see data inserted to the database and display. If you want to display, you can see all the records here. Okay, so this was about the assignment for assignment 3. I hope I have showed and demonstrated all the requirements here. Okay, so thank you. I am stopping the recording right now for this assignment. Stop presenting, stop recording.